Welcome to No Better Death, the podcast that knows while you can die no better death than your own, that doesn't mean we can't take a look for the unusual and noteworthy in the deaths of others. Each episode, we'll take an in-depth look at some out-of-the-ordinary deaths and the events surrounding them. This show will contain explicit language and graphic details. I'm your host, Sick Grayson. What up, death nerds? It's good to be back in the saddle again. I do apologize for my absence the last couple weeks. Just had some stuff going on. Like I told you on Twitter, I was supposed to help compose a couple songs for a possible collaboration with some friends of mine. And then around that same time, we started getting hit with a bunch of stuff with my wife's stomach condition. I don't want to go into a lot of detail, but something's been up with her gut for about 6 months, and we just got insurance in January, so we've been trying to get her looked at and diagnosed, figured out what's going on. Adulting shit, man, hospital bills, even with insurance, we're coming out of pocket pretty hefty, and I was just kind of bummed out about that. Didn't really feel like doing the show, but I'm a bit more upbeat today, recording this on a Saturday afternoon. Hopefully I can get this edited today and up tomorrow or Monday, and then have another one to quickly follow that. Today we're looking at Daredevils and Stuntmen, Part 1, and then I hope to follow that up sometime this week with Killer Concerts, Part 1. So, jumping right into the meat of it, no headlines, no sitting here babbling, you guys have waited long enough for a show. We're going to jump right into it, Daredevils and Stuntmen. The origin of the word daredevil can be traced back to 1794 and is defined as a recklessly daring person, one who fears nothing and will attempt anything. The dare part is obvious, but the devil part of the word can be taken to have several meanings, such as tempting or daring the devil himself, or perhaps as an image of something to be feared. Stuntmen and women are, of course, the ones we see performing the daring feats in film, television, and live performances. What's the difference between the two? Aren't they the same thing? While the layman may say yes, both daredevils and stunt persons will tell you no, they aren't the same thing. A daredevil goes for the big thrill, the shock and awe, the highest jump, the biggest explosion, the craziest stunt. A stuntman is a professionally trained performer who attempts to create a realistic visual effect via choreography and planning. So basically, a stunt person is one of many participants in a controlled environment working together in an attempt to create a small-scale enactment of a dangerous feat, going only so far as is needed to attain the desired effect. A daredevil does the full-scale stunt for real, going as far as possible, often in environments that can't be controlled as well as those in which stunt people work. They may have less money, manpower, and resources than those stunt persons working on multi-million-dollar films and TV shows. However, don't let that explanation fool you. Stunt work is no safer and no less grueling than that of daredevils. Both are insanely dangerous jobs that can, despite the best planning and safeguards, turn fatal in a split second with no notice and no way to avoid tragedy. And those tragedies are the focus of this two-part series, Don't Try This at Home, Daredevils and Stuntmen. I'm billing this as a two-parter, but it could easily go 3 or 4. Over the course of daredeviling and stunt work, a lot of people have been killed, so don't be surprised if we pick this topic up again sometime in the future for a part 3 or 4. But that'll be at least a few months down the road. I don't want to shove the same topic down your throats for a month straight. There was a time that engaging in either line of work was nearly impossible outside certain systems. If you wanted to be a stunt person, you had to work in film or television. If you wanted to be a daredevil, you needed a track record of stunts or related dangerous work, such as motocross or military experience, and a hype machine, whether self-driven or hired, in order to gain an audience and sell tickets. A path much like that of Evel Knievel. But times have changed, and today, anyone with a camera, a YouTube account, and the balls to engage in reckless behavior can call themselves a stuntman or daredevil. Unfortunately, as we're seeing more often, many of these self-proclaimed stuntmen and daredevils are failing to meet the primary objective of their quote-unquote job, that objective being not dying. That's not to say stuntmen and daredevils never met untimely demises before the age of the internet. Historically, the mortality rate of people going over Niagara Falls in a barrel has been 25%. But stunt and dare-related deaths are definitely becoming more common. Perhaps it's the lack of training, failure to plan properly, being distracted by other things such as camera position and online presence. Or maybe we're dealing with an up-and-coming generation that's been raised on so much media they don't truly cognize how dangerous what they're doing is. Regardless of cause, year, or generation, stunt and daredevil work has always been and will continue to be risky. There's a reason the feats performed by these individuals are described as death-defying. They're engaging in activities that can get them killed, and as we're about to see, some of these feats cross the line from death-defying to death-causing. First up, the story of Yu Wongning. 26-year-old Yu Wongning was a trained martial artist and former movie stuntman who rose to fame online by posting himself performing a series of risky rooftop stunts. He referred to himself as China's first rooftopper. Rooftopping, sometimes called roofing, refers to the unsecured ascent of rooftops, cranes, antennas, smokestacks, etc., usually illegally. Participants have been classified by psychologists as thrill seekers who thrive on high levels of stimulation and complexity, although other theories explaining their motivation exist, such as internet fame. They usually take selfie photos or videos and panoramic photographs, placing an emphasis on being in an extremely dangerous but unique situation. Rooftoppers clandestinely access off-limits staircases, roof hatches, ladders, etc., and it incorporates some aspects of buildering, which is the act of climbing urban structures with little to no equipment or safety gear. And this is what Wu did. He didn't just take the stairs to the rooftop so he could snap a cool selfie. He would scale the side of the building or structure in order to get to the roof with no safety equipment of any kind. He relied only on his martial arts training and careful planning to get to the top of the buildings, where he would then record or take pictures while he walked the edge of the roofs, did pull-ups while dangling from the edge, and other such precarious stunts. Many called him the Chinese Superman. He was also known as the Extreme. He shared over 500 videos and had over 1 million followers on Weibo, a Chinese microblogging site akin to Twitter. He had a similar-sized following and body of work on the short video app Huoshan. The first question would be why? Why participate in such risky behavior? It seems to me, and a few articles that I read about rooftoping and buildering, that most people do this either for the thrill, adrenaline junkies that would be doing this regardless of social media, or they do it because of social media. Pics and videos of rooftoping and buildering get likes and shares and retweets and views and subscriptions and follows. That's right, a lot of people are doing it for vanity, to look cool, to amass a following so they can feel bigger or more important than they otherwise would. They do it for the online fame and to become a influencer. But in Yu's case, he seemed to be doing it strictly for the money. If you know how the internet works, then you know that monetization depends on building an online following like the one I described a few seconds ago. With a large enough following, you get sponsorships, job offers, ad dollars, paid appearances on various media, blah blah blah. But there seems to be two kinds of people. People that want the fame and the money just happen to come along with it, or people who only want the money and have to play the social media game to get to the money. Wu seems to have fallen, no pun intended, into this last category. He came from a poverty-stricken family that he tried to support as best he could via his daredeviling and stunt work. It's reported that his mother was being treated at a mental hospital and the family needed money for her treatment. At the time of his demise, Wu's earnings from the Huoshan app, which heavily promoted his videos, had been at least $83,000 US. I was unable to find a definitive list of all the sites and apps Wu was on or what his total earnings from all of these platforms had been, but given the size of China's population, over 1 billion, and the fact that massive population is limited to state-approved Chinese-only social media, thus making it easier to acquire a following in that country, he was probably doing okay. Not rich, not a multi-millionaire, but he was probably pulling in at least a couple $100,000 a year. I could be wrong, but from the numbers I saw, that would seem to be about where he was at. In addition to caring for his immediate family, he also wanted to propose to his girlfriend, Jin, but he didn't have the money for the wedding. And my knowledge of Chinese weddings is limited only to what I learned when my daughter insisted we rent Crazy Rich Asians, which, by the way, major issues with the ending of that flick. But yeah, Chinese weddings, if that was a documentary, they look mad expensive. So when he heard of a specific stunt being sponsored with a $15,000 prize, Wu couldn't help but accept the challenge. He would perform the stunt, propose to his girlfriend the following day, and give her the wedding she deserved with the prize money he would collect. Another day at the office for Yu Wongning. Until it wasn't. Obviously, this show was called No Better Death, not No Better Everyone Lived Happily Forever After. Something goes wrong here, or we wouldn't be talking about the guy. So what was this challenge and who sponsored it? We'll get to the what. The who seems to be undetermined at this time, or the Chinese government doesn't want the who to be known. Photo sharing app Kuaishu denies having anything to do with the stunt, as does Huoshan, going so far as to sue Sina News, one of China's biggest news outlets, for publicly claiming that Huoshan was behind the stunt. This happened early November 2017, and as of January 2019, it appears no one has accepted responsibility for sponsoring the lethal stunt, and no one has been held responsible for it. Unless you want to count the people that watch the videos, thus encouraging the behavior along with the apps and sites that generate the ad revenue from everyone watching the videos, but more on that later. According to a lot of rooftoppers, it's common for companies to sign these Daredevils to contracts in which the company will cover all expenses involved in a Daredevil's travels to perform the stunts. So how a company in America might sponsor a skateboarder or rapper or whatever, companies in China are known to sponsor rooftoppers and other Daredevils, which does on some level, if not overtly, further encourage the actions of these people. And what was this stunt? What was so daunting that it took out Chinese Superman? Climbing the 62-story skyscraper of offices known as the I'm not good with foreign words, Huaiyan International Center in the Hunan Province capital city of Changsha. There is video of this available. I'd actually seen this video before I started the story, I just didn't realize it was him until I got into the research on this. My wife showed me a video a few months ago, putting two and two together. When I started research, realized, oh, I already watched this guy fall to his death. And it appears Wu undertook the stunt alone, so the only person with all the details is deceased. And as we've seen before, Asian countries aren't always forthcoming with information, so there's a lot we don't know here, such as how far he actually scaled the building. Most reports say he scaled the entire building, though I've found one or two that said he took some interior stairs as far as he could get and then had to climb the last 20 stories. Like, the last 20 stories of this building are cut off because it's a hotel, so if you're not a guest at that hotel, you can't really get anywhere past whatever the last floor is before you hit this last 20 stories. So the building was closed off from the general public from the 45th floor up, so he very well may have gone up to the 44th floor and then found a way to the outside of the building and climbed up the rest of the way to the tip top. Whether he climbed all 62 stories or only the last 20 or so, on November 8th, 2017, he did more than most of us can. I couldn't climb 20 stories or 62 stories. I probably couldn't climb up 2 stories. If I get more than 8 feet off the ground, I start getting vertigo. I've told you from the very first episode, my biggest fear is heights. And the way I don't want to die is plane crash or falling from something really high. I can't tell you how many times I got dizzy and sick to my stomach doing the research for this episode because I had to look at so many pictures of people being way the fuck off the ground and then watching this dude fall to his death 12 or 15 times. No bueno. But this guy, regardless of whether he did all 62 or just the last 20, it's more than you or I could have done. When he reached the top of the 62-story building, he began doing pull-ups from the edge. This was one of his signature moves. He had put a camera on the other side of the roof to capture it, but after doing just 2 or 3 pull-ups, he begins to struggle, like he's looking for somewhere to see his feet. You can see him kicking his feet around and throwing his legs out, trying to find just a half an inch of something sticking out of the wall to put his feet on. But no such ledge or crevice was to be found. After a few seconds, Wu is seen slipping from the ledge straight down and out of frame. Now, if you were going to die from a fall, does it matter how far you fall? Would you want to fall 62 stories and die on impact, having possibly suffered a heart attack on the way down? Or would you want to fall 45 feet and die from your injuries? As shit scared as I am of heights, I think I'd much rather fall 45 feet and die from my injuries than go the whole 62 stories to the ground. Wu didn't really have a choice, but he was lucky enough to not have to fall the entire 62 stories. He fell 45 feet to a terrace below where he is suspected to have died rather quickly from injuries sustained upon impact. His body was found later that day by a window washer. His death wasn't immediately confirmed, but his fans began to speculate what had become of him when he went too long without posting new videos or updating his blog. Finally, 1 month after the accident, the public received the confirmation they were looking for when Jin Jin stated on social media, "Today is December 8th. It makes me think of November 8th, the day you left us and this world." Wu's death sparked debate over the cash for clips internet video industry. Questions are now being asked about whether these platforms and their viewers are in some way responsible for his death and others like it. And we see this all the time right now. Someone falls off a building, slips on a cliff, or wanders into traffic trying to get that perfect selfie or video they took on to look cool on Instagram for 2 seconds. Who's truly responsible? The performer for engaging or the audience for watching? These live streamers make close-to-death reality clips, while the platforms profit as the middlemen. We cannot let these platforms become ruthless, cruel, battlefield-like places, read one op-ed piece by news outlet The Paper. State broadcaster CCTV said in a commentary that such sites should not, in their quest for profit, selectively ignore the fact videos can bring about harmful social consequences. Huoshan has since strenuously denied and encouraged Mr. Wu's stunts, saying in a statement that while it always respected extreme sports athletes' spirits of competition in their works, it was also always cautious. We do not encourage nor have we ever signed agreements with them. While no one ever forced him to scale a building, some have asked whether Mr. Wu's viewers also carry some responsibility for his death. The debate over viewers' complicity has intensified as more people around the world practice rooftopping and share their clips on social media. The craze swept Russia earlier this year. This would actually have been in about 2017. Anyway, the craze swept Russia early this year and has already claimed several lives. But the question is particularly pointed at China because live streamers and viral video makers can earn money from fans directly. Many Chinese video platforms allow followers to send virtual gifts which can then be converted to cash. The paper's op-ed accused viewers of clips like Mr. Wu's of purchasing a life. And one commenter on the discussion site Jihu said every single person who liked Mr. Wu basically took part in crowdfunding his death. Watching him and praising him was akin to buying a knife for someone who wanted to stab himself, or encouraging someone who wants to jump off of a building. Don't click like, don't click follow. This is the least we can try to do to save someone's life. The conversation comes as China struggles to contain the fast-evolving billion-dollar internet video industry. Millions are broadcasting their lives on live streams, and nearly half of China's 710 million internet users are watching them. China may be famous for its censorship and internet restrictions, but the world of live streams and short videos remain a wild west of sorts. Fierce competition for eyeballs has led to attention-grabbing antics, from eating live goldfish and chugging down raw eggs to strip teases and rooftopping. Some platforms have actively encouraged this. Earlier in 2018, Huoshan announced it was dishing out 1 billion yen to broadcasters who made viral content. In an attempt to tamp down on the industry's exuberance, the government last year set out rules for live streaming such as a ban on obscene material, including erotic banana eating. That's the problem. So many people are dying from erotic banana eating, guys. I can't tell you. That's actually next week's episode, all about dying while erotically eating bananas. And compelled platforms to set up control and monitoring of their own content. Mr. Wu's death has reignited discussions on whether more needs to be done, such as greater regulation. The People's Daily newspaper, mouthpiece of the ruling Communist Party, as if the name The People's News... Let me let you in on something. Anything that says The People's blank is fucking socialist, and if socialism is run by dickheads, it becomes communism, okay? You don't need to say The People's what the fuck ever of the Communist Party. We know it's of the Communist Party. Anyway, The People's Daily newspaper, mouthpiece of the ruling Communist Party, said in a Weibo commentary that bloody live streams should be controlled. These kind of eyeball-grabbing live streams should be canceled, said one Weibo user, while another said anything that parents wouldn't allow to be broadcast should be scrubbed. But a few have pushed back, saying calls for censorship were a knee-jerk reaction. My goodness, looking for yet another excuse to regulate video platforms, questioned one Weibo commenter. When you can't control something, you just want to throw it out, and when ideas can't catch up, you just end up blaming live streams. And what do you think? Is it the viewer's fault? Is it the Daredevils' fault? Is it the social media sites' fault or the app's fault? Like, who really... Or is it spread out? I mean, to me, I think ultimately it comes down to the daredevil or the stunt person. They're the ones who make the choice to go out into the dangerous situation. Yes, being on social media helps. Being able to make money off of it helps. That's the ultimate goal for anyone who does anything, really. I'd say 90% of our actions are in an attempt to try to get money or at least hold on to as much as we can. We live in a capitalist society. That's the point. Get up, get money. It's why we go to work every day. So it definitely does encourage someone. But at the same time, if someone needs money bad enough, they're just going to go rob somebody. They'll mug somebody in an alley or rob a bank, or they'll start selling cocaine. I think if you have it in you to go outside the normal ways of acquiring money, you're going to do it whether you're getting paid to hang off skyscrapers on YouTube and raking in ad dollars or pushing grams of coke on the corner. If you need the money and you have it in you to do that, you're going to do that. It's just a matter of what is socially acceptable. Obviously, it's more socially acceptable to dangle from a skyscraper on YouTube than it is to rob a bank. So that's the way some people end up going. But in all fairness, I think it's a bunch of pieces to one puzzle. Yes, he shouldn't have gone up there. Yes, viewers shouldn't have encouraged him. Yes, whoever was sponsoring it shouldn't have sponsored it. But at the end of the day, man, people are going to do what they're going to do. I say it's everyone's fault, but ultimately the decision rested with him and him alone to try to perform this stunt. And the video is on YouTube. Just go on YouTube and I guess look up Wu, W-U, Wongning, Y-O-N-G-N-I-N-G. It'll probably be one of the first videos that pops up. From a daredevil to a stuntman, who can forget the 1969 Sam Fuller classic Shark, also known as Shark! Well, I can't forget it, and that's because I never heard about it in the first place or saw it. And if you find yourself likewise struggling to place it, that's fine. It wasn't meant to be seen, and the studio that didn't even seem to have a name, as it was just a joint venture between producers, wanted it to be forgotten. Even the writer and director demanded his name be taken off the film entirely. And that's probably because everything about it sucked, including the distasteful way in which it was marketed to potential audience members, which led to it being rushed through the theater system as quickly as possible, though one tiny bit of light shone through in this film in the form of a young actor serving in one of his first movie roles, a mustacheless lad by the name of Burt Reynolds. Obviously, Burt came out of this fine. Other performers in the film wouldn't fare so well in the long run, and one in particular wouldn't even live to see the release of the movie. So, Shark! Here's a quick summary of the film. A gun runner played by Burt Reynolds loses his cargo near a small coastal Sudanese town. When a professor and his attractive assistant hire him in the name of scientific research, he sees a chance to compensate for his losses. But he's not the only one. It turns out that the two are actually treasure hunters, and rather than simply investigating an antiquated shipwreck, they're sending Reynolds into shark-infested waters in the hopes of recovering lost gold. The film was shot in the mid-60s in Manzanillo, Mexico, a few years before its actual release date. It sat on shelves for a few years, more on that later, during a time when CGI couldn't even be dreamed of yet, and we were still some time away from the mechanical sharks we would see in movies such as Jaws. So how could one go about filming a scene with sharks? Apparently, the solution was to round up a bunch of sharks, in this case bull sharks, and sedate them so they would be too groggy to attack anyone, and then dump them into an area for filming which had been netted off for safety. Because if there's one thing that'll protect you from multi-ton marine predators, it's a flimsy net, right? My question here is, how much can you sedate a shark without killing it? As far as I understand, sharks need to keep moving, like even in their sleep, don't they? If they stop moving, they die, right? So you can't sedate them too much or they won't move. They'll look fake and they could die. You have to find that sweet spot of just lethargic enough to not attack, but not so much they end up dying. This movie managed to find that sweet spot in every shark it used except one. One shark, who was improperly sedated, came to its senses and immediately attacked stuntman / Burt Reynolds' body double Jose Marco, whose IMDb credits him as Pedro the Diver in the opening scene, as well as a stuntman on the film. And this movie is his only IMDb credit, first and last. The bull shark mauled Jose to death on the spot. No drawn-out romanticized backstory, no long build-up to the climax with this one, and the rumors of a great white breaking through the net and killing him are false. It was this simple. Someone put the sharks in the water, then the people went in the water, the shark woke up and killed this guy. Now that alone is horrible enough. Yes, stunt people know what they're signing up for. They know it's dangerous, they know anything could go wrong despite the utmost preparation. It's just part of the job. It was the studio's handling of Jose's death that makes it such a horrible story. First, they changed the name of the film from Shark to Shark! To sensationalize the death. Then they made sure images of the attack made their way into Life magazine in an attempt to gain further media coverage of the death rather than the contents of the film itself. Not stopping there, all posters and press materials were released featuring the tagline, "A realistic film became too real," with a citation referencing the Life magazine article and artwork that depicted a man being attacked by a shark. All this despite the fact that it wasn't a shark attack movie. Remember, this was a movie about criminals and smugglers running guns and stealing gold. It wasn't a shark movie until the producers decided to cash in on the stuntman's death by playing up the details of the shark attack rather than focusing on the story of the film. This was the last straw for Fuller, who was already unhappy with choices made by the movie studio and their sloppy editing of his work. He demanded his name be removed from the project entirely. The other producers refused to take his name off. Shark! Was released as the second half of a double action bill. It played in a handful of theaters, if that, for 33 days and quickly fell into obscurity. It was re-released by Hallmark in 1975 under the name Man-Eater in an attempt to cash in on the Jaws craze, and is today believed to be owned by Troma Films. God, I love Troma, the movie studio that brought you Toxic Avenger, Class of Nukem High, Cannonball the Musical, and more. Supposedly, Lloyd Kaufman and Troma own this now. And that is the story of Jose Marco, the stuntman killed by a shark on set. And now it's time for 5 Fast Facts about stunt work. 1. Stunt work is not steady work. Stuntmen are employed on a movie-by-movie basis. Sometimes it can be for a number of months if you're lucky enough to be doing stunts for the main actor, but often a stunt performer's work on a film can be just one stunt filmed over the space of 1 or 2 days. Work is notably slower in the winter months. 2. Stunt performers, despite being members of SAG, are not eligible for Academy Award recognition, so they have their own awards, the Taurus World Stunt Awards, to recognize excellence in their field. 3. Stuntmen go to school. For those not lucky enough to have the opportunity to learn from or apprentice with a more experienced stunt performer, they can attend school in California or Florida. Why? Because much like any other job, to get gigs as a stuntman, you need experience and education. 4. Actors and actresses known to do their own stunts include Christian Bale, hell yeah, Patrick Bateman baby, Jackie Chan of course, Daniel Craig, Matt Damon, Cameron Diaz, and Tom Cruise, because nothing gets the Thetans out like hanging from a moving airplane. 5. The Screen Actors Guild stipulates that minimum pay for a stunt double or coordinator is $859 a day, far below that of other key players on set, but not bad for a day's work. That's like 3 times what I make in a day. Of course, I'm sitting on my ass in a cubicle, not falling off buildings, risking my life, so $8.59 a day seems adequate. I'd take it if I had the balls to be more than 7 feet off the ground. And that has been 5 fast facts about stunt work. Now we're going to take a look at an unfortunate soul who died doing one of the original Daredevil tricks. When you think of OG Daredevils, what comes to mind? Niagara Falls in a barrel is up there somewhere, acrobats, extreme cliff diving maybe, which is kind of what Falls in a Barrel is, being shot out of a cannon, and of course, tightrope walking. And there's no better known group of tightrope walkers than the Flying Wallendas. They're like original carny folk, at least 8 generations deep in this shit. This circus/stunt family goes back to the 1780s with family patriarch Karl Wallenda, the great-grandfather of the current generation of Wallendas, being born in 1905 Germany to a father who was the catcher in an acrobatic act and a family described as an old circus family. So they definitely go back to the 18th century, and they're like Robin's family in Batman. You know, the Graysons. The Wallendas are like the Graysons, my cousin's family. Karl began performing at age 6 and in 1922 started his own act with his brother Herman, a guy named Joseph, and a girl named Helen who would go on to be Karl's wife. The group toured for a few years, including a trip to Cuba where a man named John Ringling happened to catch their show. Ringling quickly signed the group to a deal, and by 1928 the Wallendas were performing at Madison Square Garden. The group's numbers grew, as did the scale of the stunts, often designed by Karl himself, such as the 7-person chair pyramid. And as with any stunt performer or group of performers on a long enough timeline, someone gets hurt. In the case of the Wallendas, a lot of people have gotten hurt. In 1936, Willy Wallenda died in a fall in Europe. In 1944, they narrowly escaped the Hartford, Connecticut circus fire that killed over 160 people. In 1959, an in-law named Margarita fell from a hoop and died later in the hospital. In 1962, at a show in Detroit, 3 of them fell to the ground, killing Karl's son-in-law, a nephew, damaging a niece's skull, breaking Karl's hip, and paralyzing his adopted son Mario from the waist down. In 1963, Karl's sister-in-law fell to her death. In 1972, son-in-law Richard Guzman was electrocuted by a live wire on the tower rigging as he carried a balancing pole up to Karl. Richard fell back 10 feet onto some electric wires and then another 50 feet to the floor below. And as recently as 2017, the family took a spill during a practice that injured several members, including Karl's granddaughter, Lahana, who had to be put into a medically induced coma to prevent brain swelling. And this is just the most notable incidents for the family. There's more that have happened, just more injuries and falls and spills and stuff. But for the purposes of this episode, we're going to take a look at the 1978 death of Karl Wallenda himself. It happened outside in plain view of an entire city with an audience below and, as usual, with no safety gear whatsoever. And if you read deep enough into this family's history, I'm not going to get into all the details. It kind of seems like if someone needed a taste of this medicine, it should be Karl. His own family quoted him as saying, in regards to Margarita falling and her husband trying to leave the show to get in the ambulance with her, he said, "What about the act? If you leave now, we can't do the 7-person pyramid." I get it, they're performers and the show must go on and whatnot if you live that life, but the guy could have taken a few minutes to acknowledge his family's concerns and fears and emotions when these accidents happen. Of course, I don't have all the details, I could be wrong. Maybe he was a big teddy bear who just said one distasteful thing that got taken out of context. Anyway, Karl Wallenda. I've already given you the gist of his backstory. Born to circus folk, started his own show, started his own family, most of which became part of the show. A lot of death and accidents along the way. Famous for designing the 4- and 7-person pyramid as well as cycling on a tightrope. These now standard acts, all designed by Karl. This guy ate, slept, and breathed tightrope. Notable performances by Karl included a skywalk at 65 years old across the Tallulah Gorge in Georgia, where 30,000 people watched him do handstands on a wire as he crossed the quarter-mile-wide gap. In 1974, at 69 years old, he broke a world skywalk distance record of 1,800 feet at Kings Island in Ohio, a record that stood until his great-grandson and current leader of the Wallenda family, Nick Wallenda, completed a 2,000-foot skywalk at the same location. If anyone was ever a master of the tightrope, it was Karl Wallenda. So a standard tightrope walk between two towers at a hotel in Puerto Rico should be a piece of cake, right? March 22, 1978. Karl was to walk a cable between the Canadado Holiday Inn and the Flamboyant Hotel in San Juan, Puerto Rico in an attempt to promote the Pan American Circus, in which he and granddaughter Rieta were performing a nightly act 50 feet above the heads of spectators. This wasn't to set a record, it wasn't to promote the family unit, as it was just Karl doing the walk. It was meant to be a typical, hey, look at me, then come check out the show type of stunt he had done dozens if not hundreds of times in his life. The Pan American Circus wasn't even paying him extra for it, as it was just considered part of his regular check. The 750-foot cable Karl was to walk was strung between the two towers 123 feet above the concrete below with guide ropes attached, which allowed Karl's assistants to steady the cable from below. The day of the performance, Karl himself investigated the cable and the weather. The wind was 12 miles an hour with gusts much higher, but nothing more severe than conditions Karl and his troupe had worked in hundreds of times before. Karl even commented that the wind would have been worse on the street than atop the cable. With hundreds watching from the ground, Karl decided everything was a go. What follows was captured on video and is easily found on YouTube. If you want to check it out, just look up Karl Wallenda Falls or something. You'll pull it up. The walk starts out fine. Karl, in a white shirt and what looks like brown bell-bottoms, begins the walk with balance pole in hand. He makes it a little shy of halfway across the cable when things start to get wobbly. This is attributed to the wind gusts coming off the ocean. It makes me wonder if he'd still be alive had he decided to do the walk in a place better shielded from the wind. At around the halfway mark, he shouts, "Hold tight," to his assistants below. They yelled back, "Sit, Poppy, sit." Karl then begins to crouch slowly, carefully, into a squatting position on the cable. Just as he gets into a squatting position, he lets go of his balance pole and grabs the cable with both hands. As he does so, he falls, and sadly his grip on the cable wasn't strong enough. He slips from the cable and falls 123 feet, smashing his head onto a cab parked beneath. You can't see the impact in the video, but you can see the car he strikes and two people standing near it who for some reason they don't even react. Go watch this video. Like they had no idea what was going on around them, just two dudes hanging out by a car that an old man just fell over 100 feet on top of. Guy falls from the sky, lands 10 feet from him, and they just stand there while hundreds of people run over to Karl, who is, of course, having just fallen over 10 stories with no safety gear at 73 years old, dead from multiple traumatic injuries, dead on impact. And so ended the life of Karl Wallenda, family man, tightrope pioneer, and Circus Historical Society record holder for longest circus career in history. Family and assistants stated that everything was good to go and the weather was no issue. It just happened, that's all, they said. To this day, his great-grandson Nick continues the family tradition, performing the acts Karl designed as well as coming up with his own stunts and even breaking records set by his grandfather. And the anniversary of their spill in Detroit that killed 3 people was just this past week, so definitely good timing on this story. Go check it out. They're a really interesting family. One more story, and then we're going to get out of here. From Karl Wallenda, we're going to jet over to ye olde England to take a look at human cannonball Matt Cranch. The Human Cannonball Act is a performance in which a person who acts as the cannonball is ejected from a specially designed cannon. The human cannonball lands on a horizontal net or inflated bag placed at the point as predicted by physics. The first human cannonball, launched in 1877 at the Royal Aquarium in London, was a 14-year-old girl named Zazel, whose real name was Rosa Matilda Richter. She was launched by a spring-style cannon invented by Canadian William Leonard Hunt, the Great Farini. Zazel would go on to tour with the P.T. Barnum Circus. Farini's cannon used rubber springs to launch a person from the cannon, limiting the distance he or she could be launched. Zazel's career as a human cannonball ended when a launch went awry and she broke her back. In the 1920s, something I can't pronounce, Ildebrando Zucchini invented a cannon that used compressed air to launch a human cannonball. So going from springs to compressed air, and compressed air is what most of the human cannonball stuff is. They use the compressed air style cannons now. Zucchini shot his son Hugo Zucchini out of the compressed air cannon. Members of the Zucchini family were later inducted into the Ringling Brothers Circus Hall of Fame. The impetus in the cannon is provided either by a spring or a jet of compressed air. This makes the device work more like a catapult, where the cylinder propelling the human stops at the mouth of the cannon. In a circus performance, gunpowder may be used to provide visual and auditory effects unrelated to the actual launching mechanism. The largest retailer of these human cannons is located in Greensburg, Pennsylvania. This supplier provides approximately 80% of all human catapults. More than 30 human cannonballs have died during the performance of this stunt. Among the latest was that which occurred in Kent, United Kingdom on April 25, 2011, where a human cannonball died as the result of the failure of the safety net. Landing is considered to be the most dangerous aspect of the act. If 30 wrecks happen at an intersection, the town puts up a stop sign. If 30 people die being shot out of a giant can of duster, that's cool. Why would you stop them, right? Natural selection. I've watched a human cannonball act before. I was at Gathering of the Juggalos one year, and they always bring in carnival rides and sideshows and stuff like that. And the year I went, they had a human cannonball doing this shit like clockwork. Like every 15 minutes or something for an hour or two, this guy got into the tube shot him out, he landed on the airbag, all 3 people watching gave a little clap, and that was it. It didn't strike me as something particularly dangerous, but I think I was focusing more on the cannon. I would assume something going wrong with the cannon would be the most common cause of cannonball fatalities. I never even thought, what if the airbag pops or the safety net caves? According to statistics, the cannons are the safest part of the whole act. The problem is the landing and the related safety gear. And you can see a video of this one on YouTube as well, but you don't actually see the accident. It gets to a point where, so like they show the cannon firing, and then the video just jumps ahead to police cars and a stunned audience standing there with no explanation of what happened. So anyway, April 2011, 24-year-old Matt Cranch, who was described by friends as a thrill seeker, had been working for Scott May's Daredevils stunt show, owned by stunt motorcyclist Scott May, for about a month. And I read another article that said he'd only been doing it for a week, but the other stuff I read, they all said he'd been working there for about a month and had performed the human cannonball 5 times since being hired. The show on that day was to be no different than the other 5. Matt would climb into the 25-foot cannon, which was affixed to the back of a truck. Compressed air would shoot him about 40 feet into the air, with small blasts going off to simulate cannon fire. And once he achieved his maximum height and a speed upwards of about 70 miles an hour, he'd curl into a little ball and land safely on the net below him. Unfortunately, that's not what happened on this day. See, the safety net is secured to the cannon truck with a mechanism that locks it into place so it won't fall down. And it's a quick release mechanism, so whenever they need to take the net down, they can just pop this one little thing and the net comes down and they can roll it up and put it away. But this mechanism can also easily appear to be closed when it really isn't, and the one on this truck specifically was found to be in need of cleaning and maintenance, so it was more of a liability than usual. If the mechanism's not properly closed, the vibration of the cannon firing can shake it loose and cause the net to drop. And this is what happened to Matt Cranch. If you watch the video, you see the net fall within a half second of the cannon firing. It's almost instant. Cannon fires, snap, net's gone. Eyewitness accounts state Matt did as he was trained to do, and he got launched out, he curled up into his ball, expecting to be caught by the net, but instead slammed into the ground and died shortly thereafter from traumatic injuries. In the wake of his death, Matt's family said Matthew was a free spirit who truly was a genuine guy. He brought to the world a kindness, gentleness, sensitivity, fairness, and incredible sense of humor, an unforgettable smile, and the very best of big hugs. The loss of our son is a matter we can never accept or recover from. But that's not completely the end of the story. Scott May was taken to court over this, and he did accept responsibility as the overall manager of the show. Mechanical engineer Alex Grimes said the quick-release catch on the safety net was liable to appear locked while it in fact was loose. He said it seemed to have been left dirty for years, which added to the risk. It was also confirmed that May and Cranch conducted a visual inspection of the mechanism before firing the cannon, but again, this lock could appear shut when it really wasn't. Maybe they should have flicked it with their finger at least. It sounds like they just walked up to it and looked at it and said, okay, it's good. You know, they could have wiggled it a little bit, make sure it was closed, but they didn't. And despite the mechanism having been used during at least 1,000 other launches without a problem, it happened to be a problem on that day. Scott May pled guilty to and was convicted of accidental death for which he received a 1-year community order. And this is England, so they have different legal terms over there. As best I can tell, community order is like probation with community service. So he's put on probation for a year in order to 150 hours of community service. His company, Stunts UK Limited, was fined £180,000. It was also stated that the staff needs to receive better safety training and future performances of the stunt should not include a quick-release mechanism on the net. Had it just been put in place without the quick-release mechanism there would have been no mechanism to fail. So this all came down to a convenience feature that made taking the net down easier, but needlessly introduced the possibility of net failure. Scott May's stunt show has since discontinued the human cannonball altogether. And that's the story of Human Cannonball Matt Cranch, and that is also the end of episode 18, Daredevils and Stuntmen, part 1. NoBetterDeath.info, which actually works now, no matter how you put it in, www, no www, whatever, you can now get to NoBetterDeath.info for all info on No Better Death, show notes, links, etc. Just a couple days ago, I put up a new section called 6 Speaks. So if you don't see an episode for a week or two and you want to know what's going on, just go to the website, click the 6 Speaks tab, and whatever's going on, I'll tell you right there. Also, if I just have anything random to say or pictures to throw up or something, I'll be throwing it in there as well. More of a media section and updates to sort of expand upon the audio material. If you would, tell your friends about the show. Leave an iTunes review, like, subscribe, share, tweet, do whatever you do wherever you do it. If there's a story you want me to cover, a death-related tale you'd like to share with the other death nerds, or you want to tell me to fuck off, whatever, hit me up on Facebook, Twitter, or nobetterdeath@gmail.com. Some point in the near future, I hope to have something in the way of merch and maybe a Patreon. I'll keep you updated on that. But like I said at the top of the show, just kind of had things getting in the way the last couple weeks that's preventing me from putting together any kind of merch or the Patreon the way I want to. But I'll always keep you updated on the show here and on the website. Thank you, as always, for listening. It means a lot to me. I really can't say that enough. I mean, I could sit here for an hour and just record myself talking about how awesome it is that you guys keep tuning in week after week. I'm not a very social person. I don't have a lot of friends outside. Like, I've got my wife, my 2 kids, and I've got 2 friends. Outside of that, I don't have a very big social circle. So for you guys to keep coming back to the show time after time, making the numbers go up, it kind of helps me feel better about my lack of real life friends. Anyway, I don't need to get too emotional or sentimental. We don't need any Kevin Costner speeches. This has been No Better Death, and I am your subpar host. Sick, I wish I was Robert Stack Grayson. Until next time, try not to die.